So, hello everyone. My name is Ivan, and today I'm gonna bother you with Phantom.js, GhostDriver, and a lot of stuff like that. But before I start, I was curious to know how many of you are familiar with Phantom.js? And how many of you know that now Phantom.js is also able to behave like a WebDriver? Okay. And how many of you will I upset with my terrible English, Italian accent? I'll make sure that that happens today. Please, if you don't understand something that I say, stop me and ask me to repeat. It's fine. So I do many things. Most importantly, I consider myself a computer scientist and a coder. I currently work for Amazon, and the two projects on which I spend most of my time in open source are Phantom.js, to which I'm one of the main contributors, and GhostDriver, that is practically the WebDriver implementation for Phantom.js. Just to clarify the structure a little bit, I don't know if it's maybe too deep dive too fast, but how many of you are familiar with how a WebDriver works usually? Okay, so pretty good. Just to quickly sum up. On the left side there, you have your normal WebDriver script in whatever language you write it. And you have the WebDriver library that does your abstraction and everything. And then in the middle, you have the wire protocol. That is an HTTP REST protocol that just sends up and down JSON. So what I did is, GhostDriver is a web server that listens for those commands within Phantom.js, because Phantom.js, being scriptable, allows you to create servers and other stuff. And it then responds back with commands, with the result of these commands. In terms of architecture, because there is a little bit of confusion around the naming, sometimes people call it Phantom.js, sometimes people call it GhostDriver, sometimes it goes Phantom.js driver. This is sort of an encapsulation from the lowest level of abstraction on the top. There is Phantom.js, that is just the headless browser that is scriptable based on Qt WebKit. So a mix of C++ and JavaScript. And then on top of it, I added the GhostDriver, this just a script running in Phantom.js, really. And then there are the bindings. That is what actually you use when you're writing your test. I mean, unless you want to be a little bit more funky and you want to use directly remote driver and connect to an instance of Phantom.js, usually what you do, you use the binding itself. I wrote one in Java. There are other contributors that provided the Python, the Ruby ones, the C# one. And on the right column there, you see the current stable version and what I'm working on at the moment. Oh, so before I continue, this is a conference about Selenium, and Phantom.js is sometimes people see it as a competitor. I don't see that way. But why you should care about Phantom.js and GhostDriver? First of all, it's headless. So it is not a production browser. It's not what your customer usually use, but it's good for CI and continuous integration and for your build servers, or simply when you are developing and you want to run your test much faster, or underneath your IDE or your editor or whatever you are using. Second thing is, it's fast. It's fast because mostly it doesn't draw anything on the screen. Not drawing means it doesn't have to go through the process of asking WebKit to lay out a DOM, and then after the DOM apply CSS on it, and all these kind of steps that the browser goes through to actually render an image that the users can see. I don't have measurements, so I cannot prove my point like with data. So apology for that. I didn't have time for doing something like that. But you can try it yourself. You will notice there is a difference. In some scenarios, when it's very JavaScript intensive, you might find that Chrome has an edge. But if you have on a usual website, not like a spider monkey test or other kind of stuff where you stress JavaScript, Phantom.js is slightly faster than Chrome. Again, we can have a fight afterwards about the data. The good thing is it's a real browser engine. There is no emulation going on. It's not HTML unit. It's not faking anything. It's actually WebKit running and rendering your code. Other places where Phantom.js is pretty popular is outside of the testing space. So mostly for site scraping and thumbnailing. or if you want to simply implement an API over a website that doesn't expose their data programmatically. I work for one of those companies, so I know how annoying it can be that you get filtered out. So Foundation.js serves this purpose as well. And I'm going to show, if there is time, an example of how you can build an API on top of a website that doesn't have an API using Foundation.js. And to be honest, I'm a believer that I don't really need to give you a good explanation of why you need to care. What's important in open source is the fact that if you have an idea, even if it's crazy, sometimes you throw it out, and there is an entire ecosystem that spawns out of it. And for me, the most famous example is V8. At the end of the day, Google started developing the V8 engine as a separate project, and then including it within Chrome because it's the architecture of WebKit. No one had predicted that would become an entire ecosystem on its own. So I'm going to go quickly through a simple setup on how you can get started with the Foundation.js. First of all, you have different ways you can get Foundation.js on your system. I advise most of the time to go for the first one. So you get the stable version out of the repository, and that's it. You have the executable ready to be used. There are also a lot of packaging systems like Homebrew for Mac or apt-get on, I think, on Ubuntu and Red Hat, CentOS. We have packages that are mostly in sync with the stable version. So it's pretty straightforward to install. The other two scenarios where you actually download the source code and install it, the only problem with Foundation.js when you do that is it takes time to compile because it's compiling the entire Qt WebKit with it. But if you do this way, you go this way, then please start contributing to the project because I really need people handing in hand. On both projects, both Foundation.js and GhostDriver need more people to work on it. Once you have your executable installed in your system, well, if you're developing a Java project, most of the time what you will use is either Maven or now Gradle is becoming pretty popular. And you include it directly, just declaring the dependency. The latest stable version is always on Maven Central. For Python, Ruby, and .NET, the amazing guys in the Selenium project have already integrated the binding directly into the main package, so you don't have to do anything. Practically, I think from version 2.28 of Selenium, since then you get, for all three of these, you get the library already inside Selenium, ready to be used. Now, as any other driver, it supports the standard capabilities, stuff like if you want to enable or disable JavaScript or all other kind of capabilities. But both for development purposes and also because you might want to do that, you can have, there are extra capabilities that Foundation.js driver supports that you can pass to the driver so that then it's reached to GhostDriver and GhostDriver knows how to deal with it. Those two, for example, allows you to set the path to where your Foundation.js executable is and the path to the GhostDriver main script. The second one, I iterate again, is in case you want to work or want to modify GhostDriver yourself, you can just set the capability and point to a directory where you have downloaded the source code and then go nuts. But please, if you fix a bug, send it back. Now, to show a little bit of examples, I have made a very stupid dummy project. Let's see if I can show you the, yeah, okay. So, you can see this. It's readable? Yeah? So, this thing is a very basic, not what you should use in production, test. And the only thing it does, it allows us to have subclasses that can easily instantiate their driver and abstracts which driver is going to be loaded using a configuration file in which we set which driver you want. It's totally not what you should use in production. Don't take it as an example. It's to show a sort of, to have a quick example to show you here today. And yes, I added a very, what I call non-scientific timer. So every time we run a test now, we're going to get a little number telling us how long it took to do what we did. As part of every test, we do here, I just set some basic capabilities. I have commented out a section because that one I'm going to show you special capabilities you're going to set for the Foundation.js. And then as part of the steps, I set the timer, I prepared the driver where I instantiate different versions of drivers depending on what I want to do. We can also, there's a special case of if the configuration parameter is a URL, it will, instead of using the specific driver class, it will go and use remote WebDriver and connect to that instance of the driver running. That is useful for, I think it's both Chrome driver and Foundation.js support this sort of WebDriver mode, where you leave the process running and you can connect to it and start sending tests to it. And that's it, the rest is pointless. So the first example, it's an extremely basic example. What it does, it goes to a URL that is supposed to print out your user agent and IP. This is not a test, again. It is to, I'm going to show you why I need something like that. It prints out the user agent and the IP of whatever of your machine, and then asserts if it's a valid one or not. With valid, we mean something that is either containing the string Firefox and Chrome. Why that? Because a lot of time when you're using Foundation.js and you want to do site scraping, those websites will stop you based on the user agent. So in this case, this test will fail with Foundation.js as it is at the moment. I can show you this running with Chrome. But the only problem will probably be the network. Let's see. I have registered the video of this, so most probably I'm going to be sorry in a second. Oh, OK, cool. So it did it with Chrome, and apparently we have network connectivity. And it passed through Chrome, of course, because Chrome is a valid one. If I do the same thing with Foundation.js, so of course it's going to be invalid because the string is not acceptable. So before we fix this, let's go back to the slide. A set of special capabilities that Foundation.js supports is page settings capabilities. I need to explain a little bit what a page is in the Foundation.js context. Yes?
You mentioned the capabilities to take a screenshot versus this is a headless browser. What does that screenshot work in?
Say again?
Does the screenshot work in the headless browser?
Yes, it does. It's asking if Foundation.js supports screenshot. It does.
How does it work internally?
So Foundation.js maintains the DOM structure of your page in memory. It's WebKit. It just has it. The moment in which you invoke a command, I think it's called render, you can either say just the name of the file in which you want to save, or you can get it back as a base64 string. It goes back to WebKit and says, OK, now for once, render this DOM and give it back to me in a buffer. And then we take that buffer and we either save to a file or so the Foundation.js, it does support screenshot. And I have an example to show that later on. So some people that are familiar with Foundation.js are bothered with the fact that within GhostDriver, so through this Foundation.js driver, it's not possible to access some of the capabilities of Foundation.js that are specific to Foundation.js because they are hidden. They are abstracted by the fact that Wire protocol is a generic protocol. So I started to add special capabilities that allow you to tune Foundation.js to your needs. And in this case, there is the first capability, special capabilities that I added is this foundation.js.page.settings.x. With x in that place, I mean, you're not supposed to put x. You're supposed to put any of those properties here. Those ones are then going to be given to the page every time it's created. Well, now, what's a page? Every time you open a WebDriver instance towards Foundation.js, what's happening inside Foundation.js is allocating a page. So it's the same concept as Chrome opening a tab. Same thing. That page, when it gets created, will get whatever parameters you set here. So stuff like if you want to disable the loading of images, you want to disable the JavaScript, or you want to enable or disable the control of cross-site scripting, or you want to change the user agent. That's what we're going to do. You do that through capabilities, and from that point on, your test, we use that user agent that you have provided. Now, page settings. Let's go. So, let's close this. I mentioned that there were more capabilities that you can set here. So, this line here, what I'm doing exactly what I was showing in the slides before. I set through this constant, it's the same thing, page.setting. So you don't have to remember the exact constant. And then I set, let's see if I can scroll it a bit, the user agent. And I'm just setting the user agent to be something stupid, like my user agent with the Chrome string in it. This should make our test pass now. There you go. So now, in theory, you can actually use a real user agent or multiple user agent and simulate different renderings. Because a lot of times you have, I don't know, mobile websites that render different based on the user agent. You can do that easily through Phantom.js. So, another set of specialities of Phantom.js. Phantom.js is a pretty rich command line interface. There are a lot of things you can set, behaviors to change, and it goes particularly into the area of security or control of the quota, or how much you give to your browser. This is all stuff that usually a normal user will never touch in a browser, or you as a technician, you will probably go and tune the settings of your browser. Given that Phantom.js doesn't have a UI, the only way is to control it through the command line. And there are now few commands that are specific to the WebDriver or the WebDriver mode in which we put Phantom.js when it's running GhostDriver. Just if I can show you quickly the command line, let's see. So something like this. It contains pretty much a lot of different options you can set on it. The problem is, because we are using WebDriver, you're using a sort of a layer protecting you, that is the Phantom.js driver, you cannot really set any of those through your instance of Phantom.js. So I added a new set of capabilities that are specific to passing command line parameters to Phantom.js, and that's what Phantom.js CLI arguments is. Now, when we run those tests, let's see. You have seen, I don't know if you can zoom in on this one. No. So it's just printing out some basic information. Here is saying GhostDriver is running on port 15917, started the session. The session manager has processed the request to create a new session, and then that's it. It's shutting it down. Sometimes when you are developing your tests, Phantom.js is still a work in progress, so it's not complete. Even though I'm currently it's version 1.03, I have something like 30 issues open, and I just recently got married, so I completely ignored for 4 months what was going on. There are people that want to kill me at the moment. And I apologize if any of you is here and is trying to use it. I will come back to the project in a month maximum. Maybe less. I'm also waiting for a baby, so it makes it even more complicated. So, what was I saying? Got distracted by yes, the command line arguments. Yes. So, sometimes you want to see what's happening inside GhostDriver. You want to know more about, you want to have better debugging, logging, and stuff like that. Through this property here, you can provide all sorts of command line parameters that can then be received by the Phantom.js process when it started, and control stuff like you want to disable the web security, or you want to disable SSL, ignore the SSL errors, or you want to increase the debug level. Particularly SSL error was one of the main reasons for building these capabilities, because a lot of time when you are developing, you don't, unless your company is pretty rich and you are developing over HTTP, your page is over HTTPS, the biggest trouble is with certificates are like fake or they're not valid. So what happens is, in a normal browser, you will have to add an exception, blah, 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 you do first time, and it's okay. With Phantom.js, you don't have a UI. So we have provided this option on the command line that says ignore any SSL error that you encounter. But again, the Phantom.js driver was hiding all that because it's handling the life cycle of the process on its own. So I had to add those capabilities to be able to provide those. Every time Phantom.js process is launched, it will be launched with those options. And to see that those options are actually provided, you can set the login level to debug. And now if we run again the same test, let me save this. You should see much more information. There you go. Now, again, it's a very extremely simple test, but it has printed out many more commands. Particularly, it's sending on the screen, you can actually see the HTTP requests and response that are sent and received by the driver. It might be a bit too verbose, so maybe you want to be sure that usually you don't have debugging enabled, but it's very useful to understand that what's going on. It's actually a good way also to learn how WebDriver works. And between the command line parameters, you can see all the arguments are here being passed to the process when it's launched. Tell me if I'm going too fast, but I don't know exactly how much time I have left. Actually, no, I need to speed up. So yeah, I've already shown you the command line arguments. I'm going to pass on the WebDriver mode. Or maybe I can just show you quickly. If you do something like this, yes. So now I just launched Phantom.js. I don't know if you can see the line at the bottom there. And I launched Phantom.js in WebDriver mode. At this moment, it's waiting for tests to be thrown at it. And to do that, you normally would use, let's see if I can show you a piece of code. Yes, you will use the remote WebDriver to the URL. That is the one I showed you here. So the localhost port 8910, and then your tests are sent to that instance. The reason for doing that is you have one process running, and then you send all your tests to it. It's much faster. You don't have to wait for the process to go up and down. The price to pay is, currently there is a limitation in Phantom.js. It supports only one, what's the name? The cookie jar. So in other words, you have cookies that are shared across different sessions, and that most of the time sucks. I am going to change that because I'm going to show you why. I have a slide about that in a second. So I don't know if I have time for the examples. I might come back to them after let's go forward and then I come back. Now, first of all, I wanted to talk about what's going to happen to Phantom.js. And yes, my favorite show. And I don't know if you've seen the last episode. Okay, I'm not going to say anything. No spoilers. It's amazing. As a WebDriver, it doesn't support yet some of the commands that are less commonly used. I am particularly bummed by the fact that these ones are not implemented yet, and those ones are actually the one that I don't know yet how I'm going to implement them, because Phantom.js and a normal browser have a completely different approach on how they're going to handle your alert, your confirm, and your prompt. While normally in a browser it's a modal window, in Phantom.js it's a callback. So how I'm going to match those two, I don't know yet. That's why it's not implemented. But because I was approaching the end of the year, 2012, I decided I'm going to cut those API and just release version 1.0. And so far, I've just been fixing bugs. So if you want to help or you can solve this problem, I love you. The others are about screen device orientation, geolocation, local storage. Those are all implementable. There is no limitation. Actually, Phantom.js provides a good way to access all of them. Maybe touch. We require some work on the C++ side because we need to enable it. But in general, it's all implementable. One of the aspects, though, that really needs to change now is the fact that Phantom.js in this first stage has been just, I have mentioned it many times now, that I have written just a driver that implements strictly the standard of WebDriver. It doesn't support any specifics of Phantom.js. There are a few capabilities that I've shown you, but we can go much further. There are people talking about controlling the DPI or controlling which kind of CSS extension we want to enable. There can be more that can be done. So that's one of the directions in which the project will go now, so to expose more Phantom.js specific behaviors. And maybe even have support for built-in support for emulating simulating Safari mobile or Chrome mobile. And the second thing is about multiprocess. The API now of Phantom.js recently have added support for the ability to spawn other processes from Phantom.js. That will be very useful to in WebDriver mode, where we launch Phantom.js in WebDriver mode once, and then for every time you have a request for a session for your test, so every time you do a new WebDriver, in other words, we spawn a new process that is completely isolated, does the job, and shuts down. That's exactly what Chrome driver and Chrome does, and it will also save time in terms of boots of loading, because even though you're launching a new process, you're forking from the main process. Usually, fork is faster than having to start the process from scratch. One of the issues that I have encountered since I started the project is the fact that it's sometimes it gets very annoying with the way some issues get raised. And Simon was mentioning it yesterday, and I think everyone will more or less tell you the same thing. When raising an issue, please make sure it's reproducible. Otherwise, you're going straight to the right path. I'm going to ignore you because it's just not, I can't solve a problem when you say it doesn't work. It's just not solvable. And I understand very much. I work myself for a corporation, and they require strict control over your code, PI, and all sorts of stuff like that. Makes sense. But if you are going to submit an issue, please make a simple, reproducible example so that we can actually address it. Even better, if you find a fix, you have a beer on me. And if I have time, yes, I can go back to the examples. One thing I wanted to show you was the screenshot thing. So let's go straight to the code. So yesterday, I was working on a very stupid thumbnail generator. This is an API that will look like any other API you can use in your software. Maybe it will be better in terms of signature and the methods, but this one, the only thing it does, it allows you to control the sides of your screen, it allows you to control the background and save the thumbnail somewhere. Now, why I'm talking about this here? Because Phantom.js is pretty good at taking screenshots. And my idea would be, yes, we are here for testing, but there are a lot of other scenarios where you could use Phantom.js within your software and put it in your server and not need to start X servers and stuff like that. So this API is based on, of course, on an instance of WebDriver, and it allows you to take screenshots of whatever you're asking for. Just to show you the internals, okay, this one is pretty simple. It sets the sides of the window through just normal driver commands, sets the background of the, the page here through just JavaScript, and then saves the thumbnail somewhere. Now, if I take the example, where is it? Website screenshot. What I'm doing here, I'm just taking a screenshot of my own website, and I'm doing it through this API. Imagine that you're not familiar with WebDriver at all. What we are doing here is creating an API for taking a screenshot that you can embed in your software stack. Can be C#, can be Java, can be whatever. And the other people that are using it, your client user, don't need to know that internally you're using a WebDriver. It's a completely different way of looking at WebDriver from my point of view. So let's see, right click. I use the test runner to run it. There you go. Now, this thing created a screenshot in the project. Let me close this. It's going to be this one. And create a screenshot of my page. You haven't seen any driver, you haven't seen any browser starting, it just does it. Another scenario is to have a drawing API, something like having a canvas to which you set the size, set the background, and you draw stuff on it. In this case, I have just one API to draw a color wheel in the middle of it. And so you can use something like that to draw some fancy graphics. So you can do stuff like you create a canvas, then you set the canvas size, the background, and draw a color wheel on top of it. Why would you do something like that? It's because at the end of the day, inside, I'm leveraging the power of the HTML5 canvas, drawing stuff, and then taking it out of the browser and shuffling down on an image. and you get something like this out of it. This is drawn by the canvas, and I can show you, I can prove you that it's done by the canvas. If I open this thing, set the canvas size, so it gets, oh, come on. It gets as input a driver in the constructor, and it creates just a page with a canvas in it. I'm not loading any page, I'm just throwing stuff inside the page, the default page that I get from the driver. Then setting a background on it, on the whole page, and then drawing a color wheel. That is just a bit of math to draw the colors in a circle. Again, it's not really relevant to testing, but it's a way to wrap a browser and make it do other things that you won't expect. And with this, I think I don't have any other things to talk about. Thank you. And if you have any question, any question?
When you talk about speed, you said it's fast. I know that you don't have exact statistics on that, but at least some rough ideas. 2 times fast, 4 times fast?
No, not 4 times or 2 times. I am in the order of what the speed of Chrome driver, with the difference that you don't have to have any X server running. So you don't have any need, you can run it in your server headless without setting up anything. It just runs in the background. In terms of order of speed, we are talking about Chrome driver speed. In some scenarios, you might be much faster. If you're doing a lot of drawing in your page, it will be much faster. Yes, I pushed yesterday the example project of it. Thank you.